On day 8 of the conflict in the Middle East, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened, quote, very hard strikes on Iran after demanding an unconditional surrender that did not happen. And Iran's president has issued an apology to neighboring states for Tehran strikes in the Gulf region. All of this a clear sign that the war is far from over. Joining us now is Kian Tajbakhsh, a professor of international relations at NYU, a fellow at Columbia University's Committee on Global Thought, and a former political prisoner released as part of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Thanks so much for being with us today, Kian.
Thank you.
So, given your personal experience with the regime, being a prisoner in Iran for your democracy activist work, now that a full-blown war has unfolded, what would you say is the biggest public misconception about the conflict?
Well, I would say that I think there's a big picture that a lot of the commentary is missing that is able to put this into a much larger perspective. For many Iranians who look at this conflict, they don't see the current conflict as a war that has been started by President Trump or by Prime Minister Netanyahu. In fact, for a large group of Iranians who have struggled for freedom for many, many decades, they see the military operation launched by the United States and Israel as an attempt to finish a war that Iran started 47 years ago. That is to say, in my experience as a democracy activist, it was made very clear to me when I was in Iran, both beginning to engage in projects for better relations with Iran and the West, and for supporting civil society and independent democracy, human rights groups inside Iran. It was made very clear to me that the Iranian government and the Iranian regime has viewed itself as being at war with the United States and Israel since the 1979 revolution. So that really kind of switches the frame from seeing Iran as being the victim of a military operation at the moment to being rather on the sharp end of a response by Israel and the United States, who have been engaged in this conflict for 47 years. The Iranian regime launched, from this perspective of Iranians who prefer to see it this way, Iran launched this war against the United States in 1979 by taking the U.S. embassy diplomats hostage, and very soon after, in establishing Hezbollah in Lebanon as a way of launching an attack for the elimination of the state of Israel. So as you can see, this perspective, I think, allows us to put a slightly different take on what's happening now.
So take us back to the moment you heard the news of the initial strikes. Is this something that you thought was inevitable and something that you had long anticipated, or did the speed and scale of the strikes catch you by surprise?
I would say that since the early 2000s and the late and 2009, when I was arrested and held in Evin prison for over a year, including 8 months in solitary confinement under the IRGC, it became very clear to me that the Iranian regime is itching for a fight. In fact, that's one of the things one of the senior interrogators told me when I said to them that, harassing U.S. warships in the Persian Gulf, attacking U.S. bases in the region, supporting groups like the Houthis in Yemen and the Shiite proxies in Iraq and so forth. I said, that's dangerous. The United States is going to run out of patience, and it's going to probably respond in a much more forceful way. And and one of the things that one of these senior interrogators said was, well, we are not afraid of the Americans. We, in fact, would welcome a fight because it will allow us to show our conviction, our motivations, and so forth. So I was pretty sure that over time, there would come a point, some crisis, some flashpoint in which Israel and the United States would no longer assess the costs of inaction to be tolerable. And I think the turning point in the recent past was October 7th. October 7th changed the rules of the game throughout the entire Middle East. And I think that after October 7th, both Israel and its main partner, the United States, changed their calculus about how to assess uh, accumulating risks over time. The fact that the Iranian regime insisted on reconstituting, rebuilding, and working on their nuclear weapons program and building up ballistic missiles and supporting these proxies throughout the region and threatening, as they're doing right now, to close the Straits of Hormuz and so threaten international commercial shipping related to the hydrocarbon, oil and gas, all of these things, I think, looked very different after October 7th. It was an existential threat for Israel to have Hezbollah on their borders, which Iran was its main sponsor, funder, trainer, and so forth. And the United States, as a important member of the Middle East economies with its allies in the Arab states and so forth, I think that the calculation changed after October 7th, and they began thinking about how to prevent the Iran essentially becoming North Korea, and they had to act before. I think this was the assessment of Israel and the Americans that they felt that if they waited much longer, Iran would be in a much stronger position to both shield its nuclear weapons and also to attack neighbors. And that's why I think they acted when they did.
Okay, let's talk about the last 2 days now. Trump has demanded Iran's surrender, which the regime has declined, and now Trump has vowed very hard strikes on Iran in return. Are you worried that this could escalate even further and lead to even, more civilian casualties?
Well, first of all, I should say that I and all Iranians and I'm sure many people around the world are heartbroken about the news of the death of the school children, the schoolgirls and boys that, by all accounts, were erroneously struck by a U.S. Missile attack, leading to the deaths of, I think, over 100 school children. That is an absolutely tragic event. However, I am, from what I'm reading, and I can be confident that this was not a deliberate strike. It was a errant missile, and it's being currently investigated. Um, I should point out that I am also heartened that, according to many reports that I've seen, but of course, you know that the internet is being blacked out in Iran. And even though myself, I can speak with family intermittently in Tehran, using workarounds, using calling cards, and only through landlines in which people in Tehran can call out. We don't have like direct news. We don't have very verifiable news. But the news that we have received is that has not been widespread civilian casualties yet so far. A lot of the attacks appear to be precision strikes against IRGC and Basij. That's the local paramilitary police, against their bases, against their headquarters, against their logistical centers, including, for example, their computer centers, so their command and control and communication centers. So I don't anticipate, and I certainly hope not, that there would be much greater civilian casualties. But unfortunately, in war, these tragic things happen. I just would point out that I think the military operation seems to be going faster than American authorities anticipated, and that's why I think Donald Trump is pushing for a maximalist position of unconditional surrender.
All right, Kian, thanks for your time and insight today.
Thank you.
That was Kian Tajbakhsh, a professor of international relations at NYU.